The desperate lie. In a quiet neighborhood, there lived a 12-year-old boy named Jamal. He had a kind heart and a bright smile, but life had not been easy for him. Jamal lived with his mother, Mrs. Taylor, in a small apartment. They struggled to make ends meet after his father lost his job. Money was tight, and food was often scarce. Jamal watched his mother work hard every day, trying to provide for them. He admired her strength but felt sad seeing her worry. One afternoon, Jamal's stomach growled loudly as he sat at the kitchen table. It was past lunchtime, and they had nothing to eat. He knew his mother was trying her best, but the fridge was almost empty. Just then, his mother walked in, looking exhausted. "Jamal, are you hungry?" she asked softly. "Yes, Mom. I'm really hungry," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Taylor sighed and sat down beside him. "I'm sorry, honey. I'll try to make something soon," she said, but Jamal could see the worry in her eyes. He hated to see her like this. He wanted to help her, but he didn't know how. That evening, while walking home from school, Jamal overheard some kids talking about a food pantry that offered free meals to families in need. His heart raced as he listened. "They don't ask too many questions. You just have to say you need help," one boy said. Jamal's mind began to race with ideas. What if I could get food for us? He thought. But then doubt crept in. What if they don't believe me? What if they ask too many questions? As he walked home, Jamal's thoughts turned darker. He wanted to protect his mother and keep their home together. Maybe if I tell them my mom is sick, they will help us, he decided. It was a desperate lie, but he felt it was his only choice. That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, imagining the food they could have. In the morning, he made a plan. After school, he would go to the food pantry and tell them his mother was sick. "I have to do this," he told himself, trying to feel brave. The next day, Jamal walked to the food pantry with a heavy heart. As he approached the building, his hands felt clammy. What if they found out the truth? He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The room was warm and busy, filled with volunteers sorting food. The smell of bread and fruit made his stomach growl louder. A kind-looking woman noticed him. "Hello, young man. How can I help you?" she asked with a smile. Jamal hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. My mom is sick," he stammered, his voice shaking. "We don't have any food at home." The woman's expression changed to concern. "I'm so sorry to hear that. We're here to help. Can you tell me a little more about your situation?" Jamal felt his stomach twist. He hadn't expected them to ask for details. She's been really tired and hasn't been able to cook," he lied, his heart racing. The woman nodded and wrote something down. "That's very tough. We want to make sure you get the help you need. Just a moment, okay?" Jamal watched as she walked away, and he felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He knew he was lying, but he was desperate. Moments later, the woman returned with a bag of food. "Here you go. This should help you and your mom. I hope she feels better soon," she said kindly. "Thank you," Jamal whispered, taking the bag with shaking hands. As he left the pantry, a mix of relief and shame filled him. He had gotten food, but he had lied to do it. Walking home, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He wanted to believe he did the right thing for his mother, but lying felt heavy in his heart. What would happen if they found out the truth? Would they take the food back? As Jamal neared their apartment, he noticed a police car parked nearby. Panic shot through him. What if they're here to check on me? He thought, fear gripping his chest. He hurried inside, clutching the bag tightly. Once inside, he found his mother sitting at the table, looking tired and worried. "What did you get?" she asked, a hint of hope in her voice. Jamal placed the bag on the table, feeling both proud and guilty. "Some food from the pantry," he said, forcing a smile. Mrs. Taylor's eyes brightened, but then she frowned. "Did you have to ask for help again?" "You know I don't like to burden anyone," she said softly, Concern etched on her face. Jamal nodded, feeling ashamed. I told them you were sick, he admitted, unable to hide the truth any longer. Mrs. Taylor sighed deeply, her expression a mix of disappointment and concern. Jamal, you can't lie about these things. People need to trust us. I want to find a way to get by without deceiving anyone. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Jamal's heart raced again. He opened it to find Officer Martinez standing there, looking serious but kind. Can I come in? He asked. Jamal's mind raced. What would he say? He had to think fast. Little did he know, this moment would change everything. The officer's inquiry. Jamal's heart raced as he stood at the door, staring up at Officer Martinez. The police officer's uniform was crisp, and his expression was serious but not unkind. Jamal felt a wave of panic wash over him. Had someone found out about his lie? Did they suspect him of something terrible? Sure, Jamal managed to stammer, stepping aside to let the officer in. The small apartment felt suddenly smaller, the air thick with tension. Mrs. Taylor looked up from the kitchen table, her brow furrowing in concern. Good afternoon, ma'am. Officer Martinez greeted her politely. I'm Officer Martinez. I just wanted to check in on your son after hearing some reports from the area. Mrs. Taylor's eyes widened with worry. What kind of reports? She asked, her voice steady but laced with anxiety. Nothing alarming, he reassured her, but we've received a call about a boy asking for food. It caught my attention because I wanted to make sure everything was all right. Jamal's heart sank. He felt the heat rise to his cheeks, and he avoided the officer's gaze. Did someone see him at the food pantry? I just got some food from the pantry, Jamal said, his voice barely above a whisper. He could feel his mother's eyes on him, filled with both concern and disappointment. Officer Martinez nodded, observing Jamal closely. That's good to hear, son. It's okay to ask for help when you need it. Your mother and I just want to make sure you're both safe. Mrs. Taylor stood up, crossing her arms protectively. We're fine, officer. I'm just trying my best to take care of him, she said firmly, her eyes narrowing slightly. I understand, Mom, the officer replied calmly. I just want to make sure that Jamal isn't feeling any pressure or fear about reaching out for help. Many families in our community need assistance, and there's no shame in that. Jamal could see his mother's tense posture soften a little. She looked at him, and he could feel the weight of her gaze. I didn't want to worry you, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. It's not about worrying me, Jamal, she replied gently. It's about being honest and finding the right ways to ask for help. I just want you to feel safe. The officer watched the exchange closely, his expression kind but serious. It's important to be open about these things. If you ever feel like you need food, or if you have a problem, you can talk to someone. We're here to help. Jamal nodded, but inside he felt conflicted. He had wanted to protect his mother, but now he understood that hiding the truth only made things worse. The officer continued, I'd like to offer some resources to help you both. There are community programs that can assist with food and other needs. Mrs. Taylor looked thoughtful, but also wary. Thank you, officer, but we can manage. We don't want to take advantage of anyone's kindness, she replied firmly. Officer Martinez smiled reassuringly. It's not taking advantage. It's using the resources available to you. It's what they are there for. Jamal looked between them, feeling a surge of emotions. He was grateful for the food he had brought home, but he also felt guilty for the lie he had told. The thought of his mother relying on others made him uneasy, but he realized they could use support. Mom, maybe we should listen to him, Jamal suggested, his voice trembling slightly. It could help us. I mean, you. Mrs. Taylor hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she contemplated her son's words. I just don't want you to feel ashamed, Jamal, she said softly. I don't feel ashamed, he replied earnestly. I just want us to be okay. Officer Martinez smiled, sensing the shift in the room. That's the spirit. Everyone needs help at times. It takes strength to admit that. He then handed Mrs. Taylor a pamphlet about community resources. This has information on local programs that offer food, support, and even job assistance. It's a great starting point. Mrs. Taylor accepted the pamphlet, a mixture of gratitude and hesitation on her face. "Thank you, officer. I appreciate your concern." As Officer Martinez prepared to leave, he turned to Jamal with a gentle smile. "Remember, Jamal, it's okay to reach out. You are not alone in this." After he left, the atmosphere in the apartment changed. Mrs. Taylor sat down at the table, her expression thoughtful. "You did the right thing by telling him about the food pantry, even if it felt wrong," she said gently. "I just wanted to help you, Mom," Jamal replied, feeling relief wash over him. "I didn't want us to go hungry." "I know, sweetheart. I appreciate it," she said, her voice softening. "But we have to be honest. I need to find a way to provide for us without lying or hiding." Jamal nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand now. It's better to ask for help than to make things up." He looked at the pamphlet the officer left behind, filled with hope. As the sun began to set, Jamal felt a sense of determination. They would find a way to get through this together. The next day, they would look into the programs Officer Martinez had mentioned. Together, they could make a plan. But little did they know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would lead to unexpected discoveries and tests of their strength. Jamal had learned a valuable lesson, but the road ahead would be filled with challenges. And what awaited them was far more than just food assistance. It would test the very bond they shared. The hidden truth. The next morning, Jamal woke up to the smell of fresh pancakes wafting through the apartment. His mother, Mrs. Taylor, was already in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and humming softly to herself. Jamal felt a warmth in his heart. It was one of those rare mornings when the weight of their struggles seemed to lift, even if just for a moment. "Morning, Jamal. I made your favorite," she called cheerfully, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Wow, thanks, Mom," he replied, his stomach rumbling in response. As he sat down at the table, he noticed the pamphlet from Officer Martinez lying next to the salt and pepper shakers. It reminded him of their conversation, and he felt a mix of hope and anxiety. "Are we really going to check out those programs?" Jamal asked, pouring syrup over his pancakes. "Yes, I think we should. I've been thinking a lot about what the officers said," Mrs. Taylor replied, her tone growing more serious. "We can't keep struggling like this. I want to give you the best life possible." "I get it, Mom," Jamal said, nodding. "I just don't want you to feel embarrassed." Mrs. Taylor smiled softly. "I'm not embarrassed. I'm just proud of you for being honest and brave. It's okay to ask for help." After breakfast, they finished their chores and got ready to head out. Jamal felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. What would they find at the community center? Would it be helpful, or would it just make them feel worse? When they arrived at the center, it was bustling with activity. Families were gathered, children were playing, and volunteers were moving around, ready to help. Jamal felt overwhelmed, but also hopeful. Maybe this was what they needed. Mrs. Taylor approached the front desk, where a friendly woman greeted them. "Hello, how can I help you today?" "We're here to find out about food assistance," Mrs. Taylor said, her voice steady despite the nerves that fluttered in her stomach. "Absolutely. We have a food pantry that can provide meals, as well as resources for job training and more." "Let me get you signed up," the woman replied, her smile warm and inviting. As they filled out forms, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He watched the families around them, each with their own story, their own struggles. It made him wonder about the lives of those who looked so happy on the outside. Did they have secrets too? Once they completed the paperwork, the woman handed them a schedule of available programs. "We have a community meal every Friday, and there are cooking classes too. You might find it helpful to learn new recipes." Jamal's eyes lit up at the thought. "I'd love that. I can help Mom cook more." Mrs. Taylor smiled at her son. "That sounds like a great idea. As they continued talking to the woman, Jamal's attention drifted. He noticed a group of boys nearby, laughing and joking with each other. One boy caught his eye. He had a kind face, and there was something familiar about him. Suddenly, Jamal's heart raced. The boy looked like someone he recognized from school, someone who often sat alone at lunch. He remembered the whispers and the jokes about that boy being poor. But why would he be here? Just then, the boy glanced over at Jamal. Their eyes met for a moment, and Jamal felt a rush of connection. The boy looked away quickly, but Jamal could see sadness in his eyes. "Hey, Mom, I'm going to check out those games over there," Jamal said, pointing toward the activity area. "Okay, just be careful and stay close," Mrs. Taylor replied, her attention still on the woman at the front desk. Jamal walked over to the group of boys, his heart pounding. "Hey, what are you guys doing?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Just hanging out," the boy replied, his tone friendly but guarded. "You here for the food?" "Yeah," Jamal admitted. "Things have been rough at home." The boy nodded, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Jamal wanted to ask more, to dig deeper, but he felt the weight of their shared struggles. "Me too. It's hard sometimes," the boy finally said. "But at least we can get food here." Jamal smiled, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie. "Yeah, my mom is really trying her best." "Same here. My dad lost his job, and things have been tough," the boy replied. "But at least we can still hang out here, you know." Jamal felt a connection growing. "I'm Jamal, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Jamal." "I'm Tyler," the boy said, extending his hand. As they shook hands, Jamal felt a sense of relief. In that moment, they weren't just boys from different worlds. They were two kids trying to navigate the challenges of life. "Maybe we can hang out more," Jamal suggested. "I could use a friend." "Yeah, I'd like that," Tyler said, a small smile breaking through his earlier sadness. Just then, Mrs. Taylor called out to Jamal. "Come on, honey. It's time for the cooking class." Jamal looked back at Tyler and waved goodbye. As he joined his mother, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something new, something that would change everything for both of them. Little did Jamal know that their paths would cross again, leading to unexpected discoveries that would test their resilience and friendship. The next chapter of their journey was unfolding, and both boys would soon learn that the truth can be more powerful than any lie they could tell. Unraveling secrets. As the cooking class began, Jamal found himself standing beside his mother, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. The kitchen was buzzing with energy as families gathered around tables, chopping vegetables and stirring pots. The aroma of spices filled the air, and Jamal's stomach rumbled in anticipation. "Welcome, everyone," said a cheerful instructor named Ms. Carter. "Today, we're going to make a hearty vegetable soup. It's simple, healthy, and perfect for those chilly nights." Jamal watched as Ms. Carter demonstrated how to chop onions and garlic. He noticed the way she moved with confidence, explaining each step with enthusiasm. He felt inspired and eager to learn. "Ready to give it a try, Jamal?" his mother asked, handing him a knife. "Yeah, let's do it," he replied, taking the knife and mimicking the instructor's technique. As he chopped the vegetables, he felt a sense of pride. This was something he could do, something that brought him joy amidst the challenges they faced. As the class progressed, Jamal and his mother worked side by side, laughing and chatting with the other families. He felt a warmth in his heart that had been missing for a long time. It was nice to see his mother smile and enjoy herself. However, in the corner of his eye, Jamal noticed Tyler sitting alone at a nearby table. The boy looked uncomfortable, his hands fidgeting as he watched the others. Jamal's heart sank. He wanted to reach out but wasn't sure how. After a few minutes, Jamal decided to take a break from cooking. He approached Tyler and sat down next to him. "Hey, you okay?" Jamal asked, concern in his voice. "I don't know," Tyler replied, his voice low. "I'm not really good at cooking, and I feel out of place here." Jamal understood that feeling all too well. I get it, but it's okay to be nervous. We're all learning. Want to join us? We could use another hand. Tyler hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, I guess, but I might mess things up. Who cares? We're here to have fun, Jamal said, trying to encourage him. Together, they returned to the cooking area. Jamal introduced Tyler to his mother, who welcomed him with open arms. The more, the merrier, Mrs. Taylor said with a warm smile. As they worked together, the three of them chopped vegetables and stirred the soup. Jamal noticed Tyler gradually relaxing, laughing at their silly mistakes and even sharing a few jokes. It was a small but meaningful change, and Jamal felt proud to be a part of it. While they waited for the soup to simmer, Ms. Carter gathered everyone for a short break. She invited everyone to share their stories and how they ended up at the community center. Jamal felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. He knew this could be a chance to bond with others, but it also felt risky. One by one, families shared their experiences. Some spoke about losing jobs, others about health issues, and some about simply needing a helping hand. When it was Mrs. Taylor's turn, she took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. We've been struggling for a while now, she began, her voice steady yet emotional. I lost my job, and it has been hard to make ends meet. But I want my son to have a better future, and I'm grateful for places like this where we can get help. Jamal felt a swell of pride for his mother. He could see others nodding in understanding, their faces reflecting empathy and support. When it was Tyler's turn, he looked nervous. He shifted in his seat, and Jamal gave him an encouraging nod. Tyler took a deep breath. My family is going through a tough time too. My dad lost his job, and we've had to cut back on a lot of things. I just want to help my mom. Jamal could see the pain in Tyler's eyes. He reached out and put a hand on Tyler's shoulder. We're in this together, he said softly. After the break, they returned to cooking. As the soup bubbled away, Jamal felt a sense of community forming around them. The laughter and chatter created a comforting atmosphere that made him feel less alone. As they prepared to serve the soup, Jamal couldn't shake a lingering thought. There was something deeper connecting them all. They were all battling their own demons, yet here they were, united by shared experiences. When it was time to eat, everyone gathered at the long tables, bowls of steaming soup in front of them. Jamal felt a sense of accomplishment as he took a sip. The flavors danced on his tongue, and he smiled, grateful for the hard work they had put in. After the meal, as people chatted and enjoyed their time together, Jamal noticed something out of the corner of his eye. A familiar figure stood by the door, Officer Martinez. He looked around, observing the room filled with families. Jamal felt a surge of emotions. Would the officer recognize him? What would he think of their situation? Jamal glanced at Tyler, who was also looking toward the door. They exchanged uncertain looks. It was a moment that felt charged with tension. Jamal wanted to approach the officer, but fear held him back. Are you okay? Tyler whispered, sensing Jamal's unease. Yeah, just wondering what he thinks of all this, Jamal replied, nodding toward the officer. Me too, but we're doing our best, Tyler said, his voice steady. In that moment, Jamal realized that their paths had crossed for a reason. The challenges they faced were daunting, but they were not alone. With new friendships and support from the community, Jamal felt ready to confront whatever came next. As Officer Martinez continued to observe, Jamal made a silent promise to himself. He would not let fear dictate his life. He would stand tall, face the truth, and fight for a better future, for himself, his mother, and his new friends. The journey ahead would be tough, but together, they could overcome anything. A turning point. The days passed, and the community center became a second home for Jamal and his mother. Each week, they attended cooking classes, participated in activities, and forged bonds with other families facing similar struggles. Jamal felt a sense of belonging he had never known before, and he cherished the friendships he was building. But there was one thing that weighed heavily on his mind. Officer Martinez. The encounter at the cooking class kept replaying in Jamal's head. He often found himself wondering what the officer thought of him and his situation. Jamal's nervousness grew, and he felt a desire to confront the officer directly, to show him that he was more than just a boy trying to get by. One evening, as Jamal and his mother walked home from the center, he noticed the familiar blue police car parked at the end of their street. Jamal's heart raced. The officer was there again. His mother seemed oblivious, chatting cheerfully about the day's events, but Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that he had to say something. "Mom, can we stop for a second?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Sure, honey. What's on your mind?" she replied, looking at him with curiosity. "That police car. I want to talk to the officer," Jamal admitted, glancing at the vehicle nervously. Mrs. Taylor paused, her expression shifting to concern. "Are you sure? I know you've had a tough time with the police." "I know, but I think it might help. I want him to see that I'm not just a kid in trouble. I want to show him we're trying to make things better," Jamal explained, determination growing in his voice. With a hesitant nod, his mother agreed. "Okay, but stay close to me. I'll be right by your side." As they approached the car, Jamal's palms grew sweaty. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation. Officer Martinez was leaning against the vehicle, speaking to a fellow officer. When he saw Jamal and Mrs. Taylor, he straightened up, a hint of surprise crossing his face. "Good evening, officer," Jamal said, his voice steady despite the nerves. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" "Of course, young man," Officer Martinez replied, his tone friendly yet cautious. "What's on your mind?" "I just wanted to say, I know I messed up the other day. I didn't mean to cause any trouble," Jamal started, looking directly into the officer's eyes. "I was just trying to help my mom. Things have been tough for us." Officer Martinez listened intently, nodding as Jamal spoke. "I understand. It takes courage to admit when you're struggling. Everyone goes through hard times. What matters is how you handle them. I just want you to know we're trying to do better. We've been going to the community center and cooking classes, and it feels good," Jamal continued, feeling a weight lift as he shared his thoughts. "I want to show you that I'm not a bad kid. I'm just trying to help my family." The officer's expression softened. "I appreciate you coming to talk to me, Jamal. It's important to take responsibility for our actions, and it sounds like you're doing just that. Keep working hard, and don't hesitate to reach out if you need help." Jamal felt a rush of relief. He had faced his fear, and the conversation had gone better than he had hoped. Officer Martinez was understanding and supportive, and it made him feel like he was being seen for who he really was. After their conversation, Jamal and his mother walked home in silence for a moment. Finally, his mother broke the quiet. "I'm proud of you, Jamal. That took a lot of courage. You handled yourself well." "Thanks, Mom. I just wanted him to see that we're not just a problem. We're trying to make things better," Jamal replied, feeling a sense of empowerment. That night, as Jamal lay in bed, he couldn't help but think about the officer's words. He realized that change didn't happen overnight, but it was possible with effort and determination. He felt a renewed sense of hope for his future. The following week, Jamal and his mother continued to participate in classes at the community center, but they also began to take on more responsibility. They volunteered to help organize events, assist other families, and even contribute ideas for new classes. Jamal felt a sense of purpose and pride in being part of a community that cared. One afternoon, while setting up for a family potluck, Jamal spotted Tyler across the room. He was busy arranging chairs and chatting with a few other kids. Jamal approached him with a smile. "Hey, Tyler. Want to help me set up the food tables?" "Sure. What do you need?" Tyler replied, his face lighting up. As they worked side by side, Jamal felt a growing friendship with Tyler. They shared jokes and stories, and it felt good to have someone to rely on. Tyler had become a solid friend, someone who understood the challenges they faced. As families began to arrive for the potluck, Jamal watched the room fill with laughter and warmth. He was filled with gratitude for the sense of community they had found. He remembered the struggles they had faced and how far they had come together. During the potluck, as Jamal stood at the serving table, he noticed Officer Martinez enter the community center. The officer was greeted by several families who thanked him for his support. Jamal felt a mix of nervousness and excitement as he watched the officer interact with the community. Then something surprising happened. Officer Martinez approached Jamal with a smile. "Hey, great job organizing everything," he said, genuinely impressed. "It looks like you're making the difference here." Jamal felt his cheeks flush with pride. "Thanks, officer. We're all working hard to help each other out." "I can see that. Keep it up," the officer replied, giving him a nod of encouragement. In that moment, Jamal realized how far he had come. He had faced his fears, built friendships, and found a sense of purpose. He felt a renewed determination to keep pushing forward, not just for himself, but for his mother and everyone in their community. As the potluck continued, filled with laughter and joy, Jamal knew they were all on the right path. Together, they could overcome any challenge, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next. The hidden truth. As the weeks went by, Jamal and his mother continued to thrive at the community center. They learned new recipes, made friends, and even started a small garden together in the center's backyard. Jamal felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before, but he still carried a secret that weighed heavily on his heart. One chilly afternoon, while Jamal and his mother were preparing for another community event, he overheard a conversation between Mrs. Johnson, the center's director, and Officer Martinez. They were discussing a recent incident involving a missing child in the neighborhood. Jamal's ears perked up as he listened closely. "He was last seen near the old warehouse," Mrs. Johnson said, her voice laced with concern. "We need to increase patrols in that area. The families are scared." "Yes, I agree," Officer Martinez replied. "We have to make sure the community feels safe. We need to work together." Jamal's heart raced. He remembered the old warehouse, the one near the abandoned park where he used to play. It was a place filled with memories, both good and bad. He felt a chill run down his spine at the thought of danger lurking so close to home. Later that evening, as they sat down for dinner, Jamal could hardly eat. The thought of the missing child nagged at him. His mother noticed his unease. "Is everything okay, Jamal?" she asked, setting down her fork. "I heard something today at the community center." "There's a kid missing," he replied, his voice low. "They said he was last seen near the old warehouse." His mother's expression changed to one of worry. "Oh no, that's terrible. I hope they find him soon." "Yeah, but what if something bad happens to someone else?" Jamal asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. "What if it's someone from the center?" Mrs. Taylor took a deep breath, trying to calm her son. "Jamal, I know it's scary, but we have to trust the police and the community to keep us safe. They're doing everything they can." "But I want to help. I want to do something," Jamal insisted. He felt a surge of determination. "What if I could find out more? Maybe I could help look for him." His mother frowned, worried about her son's safety. "Sweetheart, I don't want you to put yourself in danger. You can help by staying aware and sharing information if you hear anything." "I just feel like we need to do more," Jamal said, his frustration growing. That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. His mind raced with thoughts of the missing child and how he could help. He remembered how the community center had given him purpose and strength. Maybe he could organize a search party or a fundraiser to help spread awareness. The next morning, he woke up with a plan. After breakfast, he rushed to the community center, where he found Mrs. Johnson and Officer Martinez discussing safety measures. Jamal took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Mrs. Johnson, Officer Martinez, can I talk to you for a second?" he asked, his voice steady. "Of course, Jamal. What's on your mind?" Mrs. Johnson replied, giving him her full attention. "I want to help find the missing kid," he said. "I think we should organize a search party or something. We could get the community involved and raise awareness." Officer Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "That's a great idea, Jamal. Community involvement is crucial in situations like this. What do you have in mind?" Jamal's excitement grew. "We could create flyers to post around the neighborhood. Maybe we could even have a gathering at the community center to share information and brainstorm ideas. We can work together to keep our neighborhood safe." Mrs. Johnson smiled, impressed by Jamal's initiative. "That sounds like a wonderful plan. We can help you organize everything. Let's set a date for the gathering and start making those flyers." As they discussed the details, Jamal felt a sense of empowerment wash over him. He was no longer just a boy who had to lie to get food. He was taking action and making a difference. Within a few days, they organized the gathering. Families came together at the community center, and the atmosphere was filled with determination and hope. Jamal stood in front of the group, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice strong. "I know we're all worried about the missing child, but we can work together to help find him. We're stronger as a community, and we need to support each other." The crowd listened attentively, and Jamal could see the concern in their faces. "We'll make flyers to spread the word. We can also talk to our neighbors and see if anyone has seen anything unusual. It's important that we all stay vigilant." As he spoke, a woman raised her hand. "What can we do if we see something suspicious?" "Great question," Officer Martinez interjected. "If you see something strange or someone who looks out of place, call the police immediately. And if you ever feel unsafe, don't hesitate to reach out for help." The meeting continued, filled with suggestions and ideas. Jamal felt a surge of hope as he listened to his neighbors discuss how they could support each other. They formed teams to distribute flyers, check on vulnerable families, and keep an eye out for each other's children. As the gathering came to a close, Jamal felt a sense of pride. They had turned their fear into action, and the community was coming together. He knew they were not just neighbors. They were a family. In that moment, Jamal realized that he had transformed from a boy with a desperate lie into a young man who was determined to make a positive impact. He felt stronger than ever, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and hopeful for a future where everyone could feel safe. The unfolding mystery. As the weeks went by, the community's efforts to find the missing child continued to grow. Jamal felt proud to be part of such a supportive group. Every weekend, they gathered at the community center to plan their next steps, share updates, and encourage each other. The flyers they created were everywhere, and people were starting to take notice. One afternoon, while Jamal was helping Mrs. Johnson organize more flyers, he overheard a group of teenagers talking nearby. Their conversation piqued his interest, especially when he heard one of them mention the old warehouse. "Did you hear what happened at the warehouse last night?" one of the boys said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "No, what?" his friend replied, leaning in closer. "They found some old toys and clothes dumped there." "I heard it's from the missing kid," the first boy said, glancing around to make sure no adults were listening. Jamal's heart raced. Could this be a clue? He quickly excused himself from Mrs. Johnson and approached the teenagers. "Hey, do you know where the warehouse is?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, it's just down by the park," the second boy replied. "Why? Are you planning to check it out?" "Maybe," Jamal said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I heard about the missing kid. I want to help." The boys exchanged glances. "It's kind of creepy down there, but if you want to go, we'll come with you," the first boy said. "Okay, let's go now." Jamal felt a surge of adrenaline as he headed out with the teenagers. When they arrived at the old warehouse, a chill ran down Jamal's spine. The building looked abandoned, with broken windows and peeling paint. It felt eerie, and the sunlight barely reached the ground through the shadows. "Are you sure you want to do this?" one of the boys asked, hesitating at the entrance. "Yeah, we can't just ignore this," Jamal replied, trying to sound brave. "We need to see what's inside." They stepped into the warehouse, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Dust floated in the air, and the smell of mildew was strong. Jamal led the way, his heart pounding as they walked deeper into the building. Suddenly, one of the boys shouted, "Look over here." He pointed to a corner filled with old boxes and junk. Jamal rushed over, excitement bubbling inside him. As they dug through the boxes, they found various items: a broken bicycle, some old clothes and toys. Jamal's hands trembled as he picked up a small teddy bear. It looked familiar. "Hey, I think I've seen this bear before," Jamal said, his voice shaky. "I think it belonged to the missing kid." Just then, Officer Martinez entered the warehouse, having followed the group after receiving a tip about some teenagers being there. "What are you kids doing here?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Jamal held up the teddy bear. "We found this. I think it's from the missing kid." Officer Martinez's expression changed as he stepped closer to examine the bear. "Where did you find it?" "In this corner," Jamal explained, pointing. "We were hoping to find more clues." Officer Martinez nodded and quickly called for backup. The atmosphere shifted from a casual exploration to a serious investigation. Within moments, more officers arrived, cordoning off the area and starting to search through the warehouse. As Jamal watched the officers work, he felt a mixture of excitement and fear. They might finally be getting closer to finding the missing child. He glanced at the teenagers beside him, who were equally anxious. "Do you think we'll find him?" one of them asked, biting his lip. "I hope so," Jamal replied, his heart heavy. "We have to keep believing." After searching for a while, the officers uncovered a stash of more toys, clothes, and even some photographs. One photo showed a smiling boy holding a red ball, and Jamal felt a pang in his heart. That could be him, he thought. As they continued to investigate, a nearby officer called out, "We might have something here." Everyone rushed over to see what had been found. Jamal's breath caught in his throat as he approached. The officer held up a backpack, covered in dust, but still intact. "This looks like it could belong to the missing boy," he said. The officer opened the backpack, revealing a few notebooks, some snacks, and a jacket with a familiar logo on it. "We need to find out where this came from," he said, looking at Jamal and the others. Jamal felt a wave of hope wash over him. "This is it. We're getting closer." Just then, a woman's voice called out from behind, "What's going on here?" Jamal turned to see Mrs. Johnson rushing toward them, her expression a mix of worry and curiosity. "Are you all okay?" "Yes, Mrs. Johnson. We think we found some clues about the missing boy," Jamal explained, pointing to the backpack and the teddy bear. Mrs. Johnson's eyes widened. "This is incredible. We need to let the families know. They've been so worried." As the officers began taking statements and collecting evidence, Jamal felt a surge of pride. They were not just bystanders anymore. They were part of something bigger. They were helping their community. Days later, Jamal learned that the backpack had led the police to a new lead about the missing child. Although they had not found the boy yet, they were closer than ever. Jamal felt a sense of fulfillment. The community had come together, united in their desire to protect each other and ensure that no child felt alone or afraid. Jamal knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but he was determined to continue making a difference. With his mother by his side and the support of the community, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey had changed him, and he was no longer just a boy telling desperate lies. He was a boy with a purpose.